It is estimated that every second in India, a girl is forced to marry against her will. According to a recent UN report, 47% of married girls in India are below the age or the legal age of 18.
Well, 16-year-old Durga is one of them. She was forced to marry when she was just 14, and her moving story is told in a new documentary examining the age-old practice of child marriage in India. It is one of the films being screened at the 6th Singapore Indie Doc Festival, which opens tonight.
And today we have its director with us. She is Wong Jingyu, and she's going to tell us all about the story. Good morning and welcome to the show. Let's ask you about Durga. I mean, this film that you made, what prompted you to want to make a movie like that? Or a documentary, pardon me.
I think we were inspired by this photo essay actually online. It's on NetJoel, and this story about child brides really captured our hearts, and we wanted to tell something to raise even more awareness about these issues. That's why we went ahead and filmed this documentary.
So, I mean, when you went to India, it's a practice that you see happening in, in villages, in societies, in cities quite often. But Durga's story especially resonated with you. What was so unique and special about her?
I think firstly it was Durga herself. She was a charming girl, yeah, and despite being through this, she was actually very confident and joyful. So I find that very captivating. And secondly is definitely her family. They are a very closely knitted family, and it's really different. What stood out was the support that the father had with her throughout this whole experience that really stood out for us. Yeah.
Well, give us a bit more background about her story then. I mean, who is Durga? What happened?
Okay, Durga is really, she went through this whole practice of child marriage, and she was actually special because she was exchanged in exchange as a bride for her uncle. Her uncle could not find a bride, and that there was a lot of pressure on the family to actually find a bride for his uncle and for her uncle. And Durga's dad found that he has the responsibility to actually
help the uncle
to find a bride. And in the end, they managed to strike a deal with this family, which is to exchange Durga Durga into the family.
Okay. In other words, the uncle, they'll find a bride for the uncle, but in return, she has to be married off to someone as well.
Yeah, in that family. Yeah.
In that family, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, her story again, from our point of view, to think of child marriage, it seems really hard to understand, something so inconceivable. Cruel also. I mean, and legally it is not allowed either in the country, but it still commonly occurs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us a bit more. Why is that?
I think because firstly, it's definitely poverty. Because of poverty, many of them have to marry their daughters off at a very young age because it's cheaper to do so, and they will marry them off all at one go so that they don't incur additional costs to actually set up another marriage ceremony. So that's what is happening in India and many parts of the world actually. Yeah.
I suppose to a certain extent desperate measures, because you said poverty is the main reason, but I'm interested in what Durga was going through personally. I mean, she was just a 14-year-old girl and you met her. When she recounted her experience, I mean, she never met her husband, until the day of. What does she remember about the groom and, what happened?
I think what struck me when she actually narrates her encounter with me was that during the actual ceremony, she could not bring herself to actually take a look at the husband. So it's only when she finally plucked up the courage to do so, she was shocked to find out that her husband actually looked much older than her father. So that really, I think, scares her, especially for someone who is actually, at that point of time, receiving education. She actually harbors dreams to do well in the future, to be successful, and to know that she's actually going to get married to someone who might be incapable of taking care of her. I think that really scares her pretty much.
Right. And we hear other stories of the only times when some of the girls sort of get away with not being married off because they want to remain in school, and in return they find that they can make more money, and then their parents say, okay, since you're making more money for the family, you can stay in school. But it sounds like it's just a very unique situation. I mean, for Durga herself, we hear that she was obviously very scared going into the whole relationship, but they also don't move in with their husband right after being married, right? Usually they stay with their families, is that correct?
I think because the legal age to actually get married is 18, yeah, but in many rural parts of India, they actually just married off at a very young age and they move in with the in-laws. But for Durga and her family, I think that because she was actually receiving education at point of time, so her dad actually fought for her rights to continue her education until she's 16, until she completed her studies in, and before 18, her dad would want her to stay with their own family before,
Okay.
So in a way, the father was forced to give up his daughter, but he is still sort of protecting her, isn't he? So what is the sense you get from, you know, the society itself? I mean, do they practice it because, you know, they think this is a tradition, so therefore we have to abide by it? Or, you know, are their thinking changing and they recognize we shouldn't be doing this, but we're forced into it because of desperate times?
Yep, I think that they reckon that this practice is unhealthy, and especially for Durga's dad, he really wanted to make a difference, but because of society pressure, he in then have to oblige and went ahead with the marriage also. So I think what he could do now is to really support Durga and to really allow her to complete her education, and hopefully one day Durga will be able to bail herself out from this situation.
Well, it's not just a sad story, because there are occasions where actually the marriages do work out. I mean, it's not always a disaster, gloom and doom kind of story, right? I mean, there are happy scenarios as well. And you mentioned yourself that Durga seemed like a happy girl to begin with, which is why. Do you think was she still happy? Did you get a chance to, you know,
well,
interact
what gives
with her
her
more?
hope if she was so joyful? Well,
I think because during that period of time when I communicated with her, and I think that she really know that education played a big part. So she was actually very focused during that period of time when I talked to her, that she knows that she need to do well in school, and that might be her only solution out.
Right.
So.
I mean, I do recognize that sometimes these marriages do turn out well, and therefore, you know, it's great, but I still can't get away with the fact that, you know, they are not even given the choice and option to begin with. So it's really pure luck whether it turns out well or not. But this is a major challenge in India itself. It's a societal challenge, right? How difficult is it to curb such practices, to combat this? Did you get a sense of, you know, how strong the feelings are within the society over this?
When I was over there, I think that I really felt that the society put a lot of pressure on them, on these girls, and they were actually very shocked to find out that me and my team, we are all not married. So that came as a surprise to them. So you could really see that it became a norm to them, that they think that they need to carry out this culture. And so it's really hard for families that are actually trying to fight against these societal norms.
Right. Yeah. And I think we're not to judge. We can't say that it's, you know, really wrong per se, because there are.
But if you want change, I suppose you'll have to start with mindset.
Well, they still have arranged marriages, but anyway, we can't. It's a whole different can of worms, and I think we don't have time, unfortunately, to discuss that further. Thank you, Jingyu, for coming and speaking to us. Director Wong Jingyu on her latest work, Durga, which examines the practice of child marriages in India.
The film will be screened at the 6th Singapore Indie Doc Festival, which runs till 8th September at the Substation Theatre in Singapore. For screening details and tickets, you want to visit the website on your screen.